we don't actually know when the sabbatical year is. And that's a radical statement, but the bottom line is we don't.
But it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
למען ציון לא אחשה, ולמען ירושלים לא אשקוט.
You are listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.
Nehemia, good to have you here. We have so many questions that are coming up now.
Yeah, and I got one that came into my new website, nehemiaswall.com. Andrew Peacock wrote, my question pertains to the Yovel, the Jubilee year. When will the next Jubilee become effective? And you had a question about these Jubilee and
Marie
sabbatical
Flower wrote here and said, Michael, appreciate all you do. I cannot see that you've addressed this already, even though I've done it at least a dozen and 20 times. I'm told by some believers that we are not to grow gardens this year. We're supposed to give the land a rest. I'm wanting to be obedient, but I didn't grow enough last year to cover this year. And I'm not really prepared for this. Are we really supposed to let the land rest? Why or why not? Do you have any scriptures to help me understand this?
So this is a great question. So first of all, I think in response to the question you received, and I get this question all the time.
And they've heard me so many times and apparently haven't heard it. So come on, you live in the land of Israel. You're reading the original Hebrew.
So the way that all Jews interpret this, and the way it's just so clear when I read it in the Hebrew, is that these commandments related to the Shemitah of letting the land rest, the sabbatical year, are related only to the land of Israel.
Period. There's no way you could construe it any other way.
Not Kansas, not Canada, but Canaan.
Not even Babylon.
Not Babylon.
So for 490 years at period of kings, we didn't keep the Sabbath year. We owed 70 years that the land would rest. So we were told by Moses that we would be taken into a foreign land. And while we are there in exile, the land will rest. So he says, the land's going to rest. We either do it my way or we do it my way, but we're going to do it my way. The land will rest. And in Babylon, we didn't keep it.
And the point is, this has to do with the sanctity of the land of Israel. I've had people say, but it's good for the land. Well, if it's good for the land, do whatever you want. But that has nothing to do with the Torah,
Good for the land.
It has nothing to do with what the Torah is commanding us. The resting of the land is a Torah commandment. Now, what about in the land of Israel itself? We don't actually know when the sabbatical year is. And that's a radical statement, but the bottom line is we don't.
But it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
So there's a tradition that's followed today in Rabbinical Judaism of when the sabbatical year is. Very few people actually observe it in practice. But even that tradition is just one of many rival traditions. And it all goes back to the statement in the Talmud, which says the temple was destroyed in the going out of the sabbatical year. And then the rabbis come along and they say, what did those earlier rabbis mean when they said the going out of the sabbatical year? Did they mean the year 70 was a sabbatical year, or was going out, did that mean, because when we say the going out of Shabbat, we actually mean Saturday night after Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat. Maybe that meant 69 was the sabbatical year and 70 was the going out. And then it gets really fun because they say, well, actually, according to our tradition, the temple was destroyed in 68. So does that mean...
That's what Maimonides said. It was 68 of the Common Era instead of the Roman Catholic 70.
So does that mean 67 was the sabbatical year and 68 was the going out, or was it 68? And there's almost as many years as there are possibilities for there being sabbatical years.
And if you want to find cataclysmic occurrences that line up with this, you can find them just about anything. All you have to do is stretch it out there.
Jewish history is full of cataclysmic occurrences.
Right.
And so is world history. And so if you wanted to find events that would line up, I'm sure you would. So what about the Jubilee year? The Jubilee year is even more interesting. We were talking in a previous session about takanot, which are these enactments, these man-made rules and regulations of the rabbis. Takanot are usually adding laws, but sometimes they're abolishing laws. And there is a specific takanot, or takanan singular, that the rabbis proclaimed in the year that the temple was destroyed, whether that was 68 or 70. And that takanot was the abolition of the Jubilee year. So originally, Jubilee was every 50th year, and then in the 51st year, they would start counting the next sabbatical cycle. The rabbis come along in 69 or 71, depending who you believe, and they abolished the Jubilee so that they continued to do these sabbatical years every 7 years, leaving out the 50th year. So even if their tradition is right, that particular year dates back to the destruction of the temple, it still leaves out the Jubilee year. It isn't biblical.
Right. 1952, the year I was born. That was the first
cataclysmic
year
to the world, Michael.
That's right. And that's why they declared it to be a Shemitah year in the land of Israel.
Because you were born.
That's it. That's it. And so between then and now, there would have been a Jubilee and that would have thrown off everything by a year.
Oh, yeah. It goes off every 50 years by 1 year.
That's right.
So here's the bottom line for me. There are certain things that we can never know how to do until the Messiah comes and restores this truth for us. And we have verses like that in the Tanakh. Let me read you a passage that I'll bet most of your audience has never even read this passage, or if they did, they skimmed right by it. It's 2 Chronicles, chapter 15. It's one of my favorite prophecies, and it's mistranslated in your English. In your English, it says, "For a long time, Israel was without the true God and without a teaching priest and without the Torah, without the law." That's in the English, it's in the past tense. The Hebrew is not in the past tense. It's a prophecy for the future. And it says, Israel is many days, and he's looking forward into the future. And what he sees is Israel is many days without the true God and without the teaching priest and without the Torah. So we're going to have a period where Israel has things that we don't know the answer to, where we don't know how to do certain things. And then we have an example of that in the book of Ezra, chapter 2. They're dealing with this issue of certain Kohanim who can't prove their lineage. And if this was rabbinical Judaism, they'd say, well, the rabbis will just make a decision and that decision will be binding. Instead, what does he say in Ezra 2? They make this decision. They say they were not to partake of the most holy food until there should be a priest to consult the Urim and Tumim. The Urim and Tumim was this prophetic device that was part of the breastplate of judgment. It wasn't 2 stones stuck in a hat. That's something different. The biblical Urim and Tumim was the breastplate of the high priest, and through that, they would be able to ask God and get this prophetic answer. And so the Shemitah is something where we just don't know, and until there's a priest standing with the Urim and Tumim and a Messiah king reigning over Israel on earth, we just won't know what to do. And that's frustrating. We want to have the answers. We want to be the Bible answer man who has all the answers. But the truth is, in the Torah, we have to have humility and say, we'll do the best we can with what we have and leave the rest up to the creator of the universe.
Don't worry about your gardens, people. It has nothing to do with you except in the land of Israel. 1952, a rabbi sold the entire land of Israel to an Arab. And so what did the Jews do? The land doesn't belong to the Jews this year, and so they continued working it. And they did that Shemitah after Shemitah. Finally, it was just probably 4 Shemitahs ago in this cycle that they started selling individual pieces of land to different Arabs. And then finally, you started to see signs go up all over Israel. We are keeping the Shemitah. We are keeping the Sabbath year. Please come back and do business with us next year. And I respected that because they are saying, no, we want to go back to this.
What most people who are farmers in Israel do is they have these loopholes, these legal fictions where they'll say either the land belongs to an Arab and therefore it's not the Jewish owned land of Israel and the Shemitah doesn't apply. Or they'll say the crops belong to the rabbinical court. It's these legal loopholes. And the bottom line is most people aren't keeping it anyway. The bottom line is, from my perspective, we just don't know. But work it out for yourself in fear and trembling with prayer and study before the creator of the universe.
You have been listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.